The country is hideous as far as Mézières, where we were met by the sous-prefect, who had come to tell us it was impossible for us to proceed any further, as we should risk breaking our necks. This disappointment threw me into a shocking temper. I remembered that 2 years ago we had been very ill there, and moreover, there was a prospect of getting no dinner. So, despite the fears that I might have overcome some people, I insisted on continuing the journey. On arriving at the town, the sous-prefect knocked into General Foch, overthrowing him and his horse. Fortunately, he escaped with nothing worse than a shock, but the accident might have killed him. Flowers were offered me. At 10 in the evening, after leaving the town, we stopped to partake of a very indifferent dinner by the roadside, particularly so to me, as I'm always upset by cold meat and detest bread. After this, I lay down in the carriage, but the road was so atrociously rough, and the carriage swayed so badly that I was as much hurt as if it had upset. At last, we reached Rethel on the 3rd at 3 in the morning, dead with fatigue. Everyone except myself and the Duchess went off to have a second dinner. I betook myself to bed immediately, but was unable to sleep. Next day after breakfast, we attended Mass, and I received the authorities. The mayor exhausted himself by repeating to me over and over again in his harangue the fact that he was a good champenois, inhabitant of Champagne. This was obvious without much talk. 2 years ago, we lunched here, after which the emperor met a man in the courtyard who asked for a pension, explaining he had formerly been the emperor's writing master. The emperor recognized him, granting his request, and clapped him on the shoulder, saying, "Right, my good friend, you made a fine pupil then." Rethel is a poor little town of 3,000 to 4,000 inhabitants, which I left at midday. The country is hideous. As far as Reims, one sees nothing but plains and fields. Fertile, certainly, but there's nothing agreeable for the eye to rest upon. Towards 3 o'clock, we descended into Reims, a very fine city. All the houses were hung with the products of the municipal manufacturers. I was offered a basket of gingerbread. A league away from Reims is Sillery, the estate of Mr. Veller, where I had lunch when I first came to France. The scenery is pretty enough. Between Jonquerie, Fismes, and Bran, there is a pretty little stream in a valley, and the landscape becomes more wooded. Near Bran, I recognized the cemetery where the emperor awaited me. As I passed through, I recalled the terror I felt in seeing him arrive without having been forewarned. It was, however, very good of him to have saved me the embarrassment of the reception, which was to take place the next day. At 10 o'clock, we arrived at Soissons, where we dined at the Bishop's Palace, which is a very fine building, but simply furnished. Mr. de Beauharnais, I believe, has his rank of senator here, but it is not yet arranged. During dinner, the noise of the pealing bells made horrible music. We entered our carriages again in a fearful storm to leave Soissons. This is where the King of Holland awaited me with a letter from the Emperor, and was astonished on opening my door to find the Emperor in my carriage. The road to Compiègne is quite good. I slept nearly all the way until our arrival on the night at 1 o'clock in the morning. It was quite strange to find myself in such a vast palace, but thankful for a good bed and beautiful rooms, a great comfort. However, this pleasure was not without bitterness, for I thought of the days I had spent there with the emperor, and passed the night in tears. Next morning, I was surprised to find the changes in the garden, which has been laid out in front of the house. It is very much enlarged, and the trees are growing well. My son's room, which adjoins my own, has been furnished and is very pretty. On the 9th, I lunched with my ladies, each of whom related her adventures. We were gay and happy because we were nearing Paris. At 1 o'clock, I started in the carriage and arrived without mishap at the Pont Saint-Maxence, where an unfortunate postilion who was attached to Prince Aldobrandini's carriage broke his arm. It is really very sad, but I feel thankful. The innocent cause of such a misfortune, I invariably reproach myself with it. Finally, at 7:30 in the evening, we arrived in good health at St. Cloud, where I found my son much improved. Journey 9. Journey to Cherbourg, 1813. Although after his recent interview with Metternich, the emperor could no longer doubt the adhesion of Austria to the coalition, he wished Marie Louise to be kept in ignorance of it until the last moment. He had promised to assist at the inauguration of the basin at Cherbourg, but being unable to attend himself, desired the Empress to represent him. He wrote the commissaries on August 12th. I wish the Empress to undertake her journey to Cherbourg, but only on her return to learn all this. The affair with Austria let her start on the 17th. She intended to leave on the 19th and wrote, the Emperor will send me to Cherbourg on the 19th to inspect the new port. She did not proceed, however, until the 23rd, and the following is her own account of it. On 23rd August at 8 in the morning, I left St. Cloud for Cherbourg, feeling very depressed, and therefore without any interest in the undertaking, for I detest traveling more than ever. Moreover, I am certain my countenance must depress everyone, for I feel so sad and have no wish to hide it. Also, the separation from my son, who is my consolation during the Emperor's absence, is very trying to me. All this put me in such a bad humor that I was silent during the whole of the first stage, entirely oblivious to the beauties of the route as far as Saint-Germain. However, the cheers of the young people from the École who had come out on horseback to meet me at length aroused me from my thoughts. We changed horses very quickly and afterwards went through an exceedingly beautiful part of the forest. The road as far as Melun, with its slopes covered with vines and fruit trees, attracted me very much. Also the charming country houses, one in particular, which lies on the left along the bank of the Seine, with a large garden on the right hand. Melun itself is a detestable little town. If all the houses resemble the one where we launched, it must be renowned for its dirtiness. We were obliged to pass through the kitchen and a horrible dark passage to reach the dining room, and risked our lives owing to 2 or 3 grimalkins which ran through our legs. But these little accidents only add to the amusement of a journey. 2 leagues from Melun, we passed Monsieur de Saint-Agnan's house, which looks quite attractive. His little children were walking in the garden, looking as pretty as loves. The road passed through the avenues of the fine park of Rosny, leaving the ancient castle to the right along the bank of the Seine until it ascends a steep slope from which a glorious view can be obtained. The country as far as ever is not unpleasing, particularly the approach to the town, where wooded hills give a fine effect. We arrived at Evreux at 5 o'clock. The postilions drove like mad into the town, thereby causing a brigadier general to find himself in danger of his life between the carriage and the houses, which gave us a terrible fright. There are truly many things to make one's blood curdle during a journey, and the doctors who always scold when one returns ill after a journey should really forbid the generals getting caught between the wheels and the postilions falling off their horses. I lodged at the prefecture at the house of Mr. de Mâcon, chamberlain to the emperor, where I was made exceedingly comfortable in 4 rooms in a very pretty garden in front of my window. Some excellent cream was brought me, of which I longed to partake, but thought of Monsieur Corvisart and sacrificed myself to his wishes. This was not easy, but was commendable, for he never knew of it. Evreux is a town of 16,000 inhabitants with scarcely any commerce. After dinner, I received the authorities, who treated me to some rather ludicrous speeches. Little girls came to offer me flowers, and a concert was given in the salon. Verses were sung, and a pretty young lady played the harp. Also one of the guard of honor, the bassoon. The garden and the town was illuminated. At 8 o'clock next day, I left for Caen, passing on the left the Chateau de Navarre, which has a somewhat Gothic appearance at the end of a fine avenue. We followed this beautiful road across a great plain to the river Thiberville, running through a fairly broad valley surrounded by high hills. A very clear little stream runs at the bottom of it. I stopped for lunch at a place called La Riviere de Bouville, where is a castle belonging to the Chevalier de Revillac, very badly kept, but in superb surroundings. From the terrace, a view of the whole valley can be obtained. The village is on the left, and on a hill are ruins of an ancient abbey. On leaving this, we crossed a large part of the park where there are magnificent forest trees. The country is extremely beautiful and is quite enchanting. From the hill de Sceaux, which is rather steep, The town lies in a valley approached through gardens and meadows and orchards. The scenery recalls Brussels on the side toward Laeken. On passing through this sewer, I was welcomed in a truly touching manner. Generally throughout Normandy, everyone is sincerely attached to the Emperor, and the enthusiasm of these good people impressed me much. The mayor and a number of young ladies dressed in white awaited me at a triumphal arch where 12 charming little fountains had been arranged, from which water was playing. They wished to present me with flowers, so I called out to the equerry to stop, but General Caffarelli, who feared they were going to eat me, always being suspicious, made a sign to go on. Consequently, I was not listened to. For in this world, those who make themselves feared are always obeyed. The inhabitants, therefore, were much disappointed. I told them I would take luncheon there on my return. The country is delightful, too, within a few leagues of Caen, with its orchards and meadows where the finest cattle are fattened. There are some splendid herds, and excellent butter and good cream are made in Normandy. I must confess my virtue was not equal to the last occasion, for I succumbed to the temptation regardless of the result. The Cauchois, women of the Pays de Caux, are first seen in this part, recognizable at once by their caps, which are pointed and have tulip heads. They are a very fine race. We noticed many beautiful peasant women. Farther on, the landscape is less attractive, for it is much flatter. Consequently, Caen may be seen from a long distance. We arrived at 5 o'clock. I was comfortable in a house of a paymaster. The prefecture was being built. Caen is rather picturesque and has a population between 20,000 and 30,000 who make a kind of lace, also cotton stockings, but they are worthless because they are bleached in lime water. There is a magnificent church built of white marble by William the Conqueror, in which he is buried. It has splendid stained glass windows. After dinner, I undertook my habitual task of receiving the local authorities. Rank is truly a mixed blessing, for it necessitates the holding of receptions, though one may be fatigued, and though longing to weep, the obligation to laugh, and one is never even pitied